This video is going to talk about how to unlock every single item of loot, what they do, and if they're any good. Let's get into it. A few things before we begin. Loot items can be really frustrating because they are only available during certain chapters within the main campaign. So if you are going for a specific item, I recommend doing it side story as soon as you see that it is available. Check the timestamps if you want to see my breakdown on only certain items, and if there are any corrections or updates that I have to the information I present, that will be in the description/pinned comments. Let's get started! Starting the list off, we have the Flying Pig. This adorable little guy really leans into the zany kind of dumb sense of humor that the game has at every single turn here. The options of users are all your muscle minions and your worker minions, as we see here, and its effect is that they will slowly regenerate morale up to whatever cap they have. Then they receive the adorable little buff here, Flying Pig Ride. That was fun. My understanding is this buff has no effect, it just shows that they recently operated the item. Coming over here to the tier list, as fun as that ride looks, it's going to have to drop down into the C tier. The loot items that have this effect of restoring morale are kind of a dime a dozen, and this one is not even the best one with that effect. Coming over to the Meteor here, I was really hoping for something more out of this loot item, especially with the requirement of having to employ 15 scientists to be able to unlock its side story, but no, it hums with alien power and has no effect. It's just cosmetic, and for cosmetics, it looks great, but that is not going to rank it very highly on our loot list. We are dumping this glorified paperweight all the way down into the D tier. The Canadians make their addition to our collection of curios with the Maple Syrup Dispenser. Usable by all minions, the effect is that minions will slowly increase morale up to whatever their cap is. Once the minions have slurped down all the syrupy goodness that they can possibly stomach, they get this lovely little buff with a thought bubble appearing over their head depicting the maple syrup, and then they have this buff right here, restoring morale, and this will last for 1 minute, and it will not necessarily overcome the morale decay of minions working certain jobs, but it will cause that morale to decrease at a slower rate. A right of servicing more minion types and having that lasting morale buff, I'm going to place this in the B tier directly above the pig, and this is probably the best loot item when it comes to the items that restore morale. Ah yes, the sword in the stone. Legend says that it will make those who pull the sword from the stone invincible, and it will give headaches to the genius who tries to figure out how to get your security minions to do this en masse. The users are all security minion types. They will come up to the item and they will try to quote-unquote operate it by pulling the sword from the stone, and this will drain their smarts all the way down from whatever they have to 35, at which point you will see if they are successful or not. Unfortunately, Charles de Silva here is not the chosen future king of England, and neither is the vast majority of my other security forces. They get this little thought bubble with the sword still locked in the stone. If they had successfully pulled it, you would be able to see the sword free of the stone and kind of gleaming. So the chosen ones go to sleep, and then when they wake up the next day, they have effectively extra lives. If they were to die in combat, they would rapidly regenerate health instead of dying. All the ones who fail to pull the sword from the stone will continue to have this little bubble as a status effect because they can't go back and retry to pull the sword from the stone, but they get no buff from it. From my testing, I have only seen the character during the side story be able to successfully pull the sword from the stone, so I don't know if I'm just missing something about this item, or it's bugged, or some other situation has come around where it's not reaching its full potential, but because I see it only affecting a very tiny fraction of my security force, I have to put it all the way down in C tier. It looks great, it's cool, it's a fun side story, but that's really all it's offering. The Declaration of Independence. Usable by all minion types, its effect is that it will increase the morale of the minion who is looking at the declaration, and I do want to say that this loot item is required to be able to recruit Carl Cafard. That's not a big deal because I think that Carl is the worst henchman in the game right now. Maybe one day they will patch you, little Carl, but until then we've got the Declaration, which also, spoilers for Carl's side story, happens to be a fake. As much respect as I have for the actual Declaration of Independence, that's not going to earn it any points here, so it is launching all the way down into C tier. Be the little friend of the Flying Pig down there. Advancing into Chapter 4, I promise the loot gets better and more interesting from here on out. The Statue of Liberty's torch. This item is very interesting. It has a radius around it, and minions who pass through that radius have a chance of receiving the buff here, increased spotting power. This means that it will be easier for them to see through agents' disguises. This is a great item to place around your minions who are watching your security cameras, or to place right within the doors to your base, so that any of the guards you have stationed there will be able to see through those top tier agent disguises. Being able to improve minion spotting power is really useful, especially early on in the game, and this item becomes available very early as well. Being able to see through those agent disguises without having to micromanage your genius or your henchman is awesome. By the end of the game, it's going to start falling off because those final tiers of minions that you unlock have pretty much unrivaled spotting power and don't need any kind of buff to be able to see through the agent disguises. But I'm going to put this up as the very first A tier item that we're getting. I think that it is great. It does fall off later on. And so if you find that you just don't have too much of a problem spotting agents in disguise, it's going to probably fall down to B tier. But for me, the way that I have been playing the game and getting a lot of high-leveled agents pretty early on, I'm going to put it up in A tier. The Sands of Time, an incredibly unique loot item. This item functions with a radius similar to Liberty's torch, but it does not buff minions. It instead impacts items built nearby. The items who are nearby and have this particle effect of the Sands of Time flowing around them will have their durability increase rather than decrease up to whatever cap. So these items, your techs will never have to worry about repairing them. Unfortunately for the Sands of Time, item durability is not really a big deal in Evil Genius 2, and it does not target all items. It will not hit traps, which would have been probably its most useful application. And so I've never really found an issue with items just decaying away out of lack of durability. Techs are extremely cheap to employ, fast to train, and I can keep a large enough force of them in my base at all times to keep any of my items from actually breaking down on me. So we're going to put the Sands of Time down into C tier. I did test if it would repair items placed by henchmen, so the traps of Sir Daniel and the traps of Karl Kafard. If it had worked on those, I was ready to throw this all the way up into S tier, but from my testing, it does not. I repeat, it does not repair those traps. Chapter 7 ushers in the mid-game. If you guys are enjoying the video, leave a like and subscribe. Subscribers are always noticed and appreciated around here. Cupid's arrow is the first in a series of loot items that all function as traps. Let's see what this has in store for our agent friends. So they have entered. These are level 9 investigators. The item has fired. It was triggered by the investigators, but like all your traps, it does have the potential for causing friendly fire. It will shoot an arrow hitting 2 targets with these explosions of hots, and so it will damage both of its targets. And then I believe we pierced to a third even. We hit the investigator. They are now all destined to be married, I suppose. The trap has a solid range and does about 20 damage, and so because you saw that it would pierce all the targets on a straight line to whatever it was fired at, if you fire into a clump of agents, then you're going to be able to get more damage out of it, and also you run the risk of hitting your own minions, just exactly like we saw. I actually really like Cupid's arrow as a trap. I think that it is more reliable than a lot of the other traps that you can get. Because of its range, it can very reliably hit multiple investigators, and it does decent damage even when compared with the very final level traps that you're able to research, like the Puppy of Death. So we're throwing this up into the A tier. The Meditation Stone. This is a very subtle but also very useful loot item. It has spaces for 3 minions to sit and meditate. It's usable by all minion types. And the minions here, they've got their funny name, their stats, and then these traits. There are both positive and negative, and I think also some neutral traits that are listed here. When minions meditate at the stone, once they finish meditating, so they spend smarts while they meditate, once they finish meditating, it will remove any negative traits from the minion. So let's take Mr. Mike Wobbles here as an example. He is a great counter agent, excellent stats across the board, and he feels no pain, but he is also terribly disloyal. Let's see if a little bit of meditation can cure him of this. Okay, down to 40 smarts, he gets up, and now he is no longer disloyal, so it will not replace the negative trait with a positive one, but it will just remove those negative traits. If you want to get an idea on your entire minion library, you can go through your minions here and be able to see their long list of traits. Everybody's got traits. Well, I guess not everybody. This could be because they initially spawned in with negative traits, and then were purged by the meditation stone, or it just could be that the game does it unevenly. But usually minions are only going to have 2. They have a bar here that could fit a lot more spaces. Hopefully in a DLC we get to explore traits a little bit more. If you guys are curious what all of the trait effects are, check out the patch notes for patch 1.3. They did some changes to the different traits. That's all I've seen as to the actual breakdown of the trait effects. There could be another list out there. If I find it, I'll have it linked in the description. The meditation stone, especially with 3 spaces, so being able to have 3 minions meditating at a time to be able to get rid of all those negative traits is pretty nice, but I mean, overall, those minion traits are kind of out of sight, out of mind, so they don't feel hugely impactful to the game. I'm gonna throw this up into the B tier, kind of a middling place for it, because it definitely is bringing a benefit, making all of your minions more efficient. It's just very subtle, and you're not going to feel much of an impact when you bring it in, but just know that it is doing work for you. Ah, the Flame of Prometheus. This one is one of my white whales. I went out with 4 different campaigns with the express intention of trying to pick up all of the different loot items. This was one of the ones I was never able to get. I consulted forum posts and multiple other online resources as to what the requirements are to be able to pick up these different loot items. They were all in agreement here that what you have to do is be in Chapter 7 and have an item catch on fire in your lair to be able to unlock the side story, "The World is Hot Enough." I did that, but never saw the side story, and then I would jog the campaign forward a little bit farther and then try and light something else on fire, and then still no side story, so I progressed until I was out of the chapter, and then I just kind of let it be that this was just going to be the ones that I would never be able to pick up. Minor spoilers for the rest of the list. I'm pretty high on any of the loot items that are a trap, so we're going to throw this up into A tier alongside Cupid's bow here, sight unseen, trusting that as a fire trap, and the loot specifically fire trap, that this is going to be a pretty effective loot item to be able to acquire. If you guys have advice on to how to get this item, or maybe why I have constantly failed, throw it down in the comments and I'll try and update the description or pin a comment to be able to help other people who are looking for this item. Chapter 8 arrives with the only other loot item that I was not able to acquire. The doors of Fort Knox eluded me throughout all of my campaigns. Now here it was kind of interesting. The guides that I was following had discrepancies onto what you had to do to be able to get the doors of Fort Knox. Now some of them said that you would just have to run heat reducing schemes all across the world, and once you ran a certain number of schemes it would unlock. There was another guide that said that you had to run saber schemes of any type, and then there was like a cross between them that said that you had to run a heat reduction scheme in northern saber territories. I did all of these. I never got this side story. Maybe I just never ran enough schemes to be able to acquire the side story, but I ran quite a few and just didn't find it, so maybe there is some key that has eluded me. From the research that I have done on this item, it is an absolute joke. It is supposed to be a doorway that is very hard for agents to get through, but as a loot item, it can be stolen by rogues. So Symmetry can just steal it and then walk through the now empty doorway instead of having to hack through it and wasting time there. I kind of dislike doorways that the game gives you anyway because they waste your minions' time and they also break the AI's pathing around combat, and so I'm throwing this down in the D tier. Say hello to Mr. Meteor at the doors of Fort Knox. A lot of loot opens up in Chapter 9. The first one we're going to cover is the Giant Egg. This guy is great. It serves as a rapid training item for scientists training to become biologists. The training speed of scientists becoming biologists at the egg is as fast as if they had a scientist mentor working with them, actually training them. So they have this increased training speed. Then, after training to become a biologist from the giant egg, they gain this buff, Egghead. After studying the giant egg, this minion can research faster. So unfortunately, the buff does eventually go away. It looks like it lasts for about 2.5 minutes. It's still a very nice addition to what is already a good loot item. I love the giant egg. We're going straight up into A tier. The rapid training is fantastic, and the buff is kind of the cherry on top. If the buff was indefinite or just lasted significantly longer, I could see this going all the way up into S tier, but because that increased research speed only lasts for about 2.5 minutes after the scientist had trained up, it's not going to be doing that much work for you. Ooh, Alicelyn, you're about to be in for one of the worst experiences of your life. The flower's after you. Oh no. So we have here the Carrion flower. It unleashes a burst of incredibly putrid smelling gas around this very large radius. It has a very large base for being a trap. It's also extremely tall. I love the effect of the skulls coming out of the smell from the flower. I just love everything about this item. It is so good. And as you saw there, it did massive damage to poor Lynn's health, skill, and resolve all together. It does that burst and then rapidly deteriorates the stats of any of the agents caught around it. So you can probably come up with even more effective and clever trap combinations to pull clumps of agents in around it than what I have constructed here. Good luck to you using this loot item. The loot traps are having a very favorable showing on this list. I'm throwing this one right up there in A tier with the other ones that we have reviewed so far. You guys saw how potent it is, hitting all 3 of the agent's stats and doing significant damage to all of them. This is an incredible trap. The Bush Tuck Barbecue is full of personality. It serves as effectively a dining hall extension. It has eating space for 5 minions and does not even require an operator. Minions can eat their fill of the bugs that appear to be on the menu. I guess there's some shrimp in there too. When they leave, they don't get any additional buff. It's just a nice extension and a fairly space-efficient extension as well to your dining hall options. Shout out in the comments if you've been to this restaurant in real life. On the tier list here, the Bush Tuck Barbecue is not doing anything too special for us. It's replacing some dining hall items at a very space-efficient manner, and I do like that it doesn't require an operator, so we're placing it in the middle here, around the B tier. The Sarcophagus. This is an awesome loot item. What it does is it is usable by all minions. You have to have a scientist to operate it, and then minions who enter, they peel back the lid and embrace the dark powers of Anubis, and they will be able to leave with 100 health. So this not only restores health, but it will also upgrade minion health up to 100. And you can get this before you're able to research a lot of the advanced item types that will otherwise buff your minion's health to 100, making it incredibly powerful. Being able to get this, especially for your muscle minions, is just invaluable. This is swinging all the way up to be our very first S tier item. Being able to get 100 health on your guards as soon as possible is a night and day difference to how durable your security forces are. It's absolutely incredible. Go for this every single chance that you get. And did I mention the Sarcophagus has no downsides? I guess the downside is that you have to have a scientist class minion as an operator, but that's true for any of the items that you have to build when you research them anyway. I'm not gonna sweat that. The carpet would be able to show you the world if it wasn't heavily guarded and impounded here in my lair. So it's usable by all minions and they will restore morale fairly quickly actually, and it will go all the way up to 100 if you have those items that are buffing up the max stat that your minions have. Being a fan of Aladdin, it hurts me to throw this all the way down in C tier, but that's where it's going with these other loot items that all they do is restore morale. Now this one does restore morale fairly quickly. Maybe it deserves to be up in B tier, but it just doesn't seem very exciting to be kind of replacing an EGTV, but the EGTVs can service 4 minions at once, whereas this one is only handling 1, and it still takes up a lot of space in your lair. Rumpelstiltskin's wheel. This is an awesome, awesome loot item. Spin, Ross, constant spin until this piggy bank is full. But that's a loot item I haven't talked about yet. Right now, we're looking at the wheel. So it offers a single minion a job spinning worthless hay into gold. There's also something in the story about selling off your firstborn children, but I didn't read that part. So the workers will end up spending their smarts down to about 25, and then they will leave, and you will get a lump sum of gold into your vault. Almost done with this run, and there we go, 9,030 gold. I believe that the figure scales with how much smarts the minion expended, so the longer an individual minion is working there, the more you are going to make. I am not 100% sure that's how it works, but I have seen varying figures, and it does seem to be connected with how much smarts they enter the job with. When they enter with only 50 smarts here, I've been seeing like 5,000, and then that minion came in with a buff to his smarts. He had about 70 smarts when he started working, so we pulled all the way up to 9,000 gold at a time. Where to rank this on the tier list? Man, oh man, it is hilarious that this item is probably more profitable than your entire casino. I'm gonna have to place it here in the middle because you do make just so much more money out on the world stage. You make more money just as passive income off of having criminal networks. So this isn't going to make a big difference in how much it feels like your vaults are getting topped off. It's definitely nice to have. It is an efficient job for a minion to be working, so it's worth it in that sense. But money problems are pretty minor in the game with the way that the schemes are currently balanced. I'm making this on patch 1.3 balance notes, so that's where we're placing it, right here in the middle into B tier. The world's oldest bones. Man, oh man, this is a hard one to rank. So the way it works is it offers a job for a science minion. They will study the bones, and that will drain their smarts. Now, I have seen conflicting reports as of what the world's oldest bones does. It does not affect the scientist studying the bones. It seems to affect some kind of other characters. I saw one comment saying that it affected your muscle minions' health. I've seen another comment saying that it affects the other science minions in terms of their vitality and morale. But I've not been able to connect a direct correlation with any of the studying and testing that I've been doing. So right now, I'm gonna kind of rank this pretty low because it seems like the scientists are just wasting their time. Maybe it's bugged, maybe mine is not showing off what it can really do, and other people have seen kind of more direct correlation of how the item operates. Check the comments and the description to see if I get an update as to how efficient this item really is. It looks awesome. It's got some pretty steep requirements, so I feel like it should be pulling more weight than it does right now. So as I said, either this item is bugged or is not doing anything. And in either case, it's going down into the D tier. Hopefully we get a patch or some kind of clarification, in which case it could be a lot more valuable than that. The Arabian jars. This is an interesting item because it generates no suspicion, or at least no suspicion for a specific advanced agent type. The item is adding $20,000 of capacity to your vault, and it cannot be stolen by rogues, which I find a little bit confusing because you steal it as part of the side story, so not sure how well these jars really function. Where to rank the Arabian jars? I'm pretty low on loot items that just extend your vault capacity, and its extra buff of not being able to be stolen by rogues I also don't really care about, because you can just kill the rogues and get back everything they steal. Like, I don't have too much of an issue dealing with Symmetry or other rogues that get sent into my lair. I'm not finding myself getting cleaned out by them, and I'm like, oh, this is so nice to have an extra 20,000, that's safe. Maybe if they made the rogues mechanic a little different, like the rogues tried to escape with your gold faster, or if they just added a ton of capacity here, like add an extra 0, heck, 200,000 capacity, then we can talk about how good this item is. As it is, I'm just going to put it down in D tier. It doesn't excite me. The glaciers are melting! Take this piece of the Hubbard slice while there is still some ice available. So this is also a very unique type of item. It has a radius, and what it does is it keeps items that are within the radius from being able to catch on fire. It comes with a little Yeti man down in the inside. I feel like he's probably more valuable than the block of ice he came in, so we'll have to break him out at some point, but just don't feel like doing that today. Ranking Mr. Yeti on the tier list here. So if you're playing as Ivan, this item is obviously way more valuable because you can you get hotspots of where Havoc always shoots fireballs and causes fires in your lair. So being able to stop off one of those problem rooms with just, this ice wall of no fire goes here would be great, The other geniuses, it doesn't matter as much. Now, when saboteurs are slipping through your lines, being able to put this next to your incinerators or some other room that you've found is the hot spot for the saboteurs, then that's also pretty solid. It won't protect against the damage done to the items by the explosion of the saboteurs' bombs, but it will prevent the fires and chaos that ensues afterwards. So I'm putting this right in the middle here in the B tier. Again, as Ivan, higher priority on this. As other geniuses, probably lower priority. I wanted to kind of balance it out and put it here in the middle. Dr. Jekyll, I presume. This item is incredibly interesting. You have this purple fuming potion here in the middle of the table. It is usable by all of your security forces and your worker minions, and will seem to not really have any effect until we activate High Alert. Once we activate High Alert, security minions are going to be drawn to use the table. They're going to run up, they're going to drink the potion, and it is going to turn them into awesome, powerful fighting monsters. And they get this crazy face buff, and they move around super fast, and they're ready to hunt down and do tons of extra damage. It is pretty sweet. It's going to completely wipe out their smarts. So afterwards, you're going to have a bunch of your security forces headed to wherever you're going to be replenishing their smarts. The Mr. Hyde side of Dr. Jekyll is not very smart. So again, true to character, this is a very, very cool item. This loot item is hard for me to rank because I use High Alert so rarely. I really like being able to set up my lair to operate without having to flip it on. It focuses your minions just into combat and pulls away from other jobs that I want running. I want my security forces to be able to deal with threats while all the other jobs just keep on processing like normal. So I don't try and use Red Alert very often. But as a last ditch, you're getting desperate. You see a very dangerous wave of agents or some story event spawns a very dangerous combat encounter. Maybe you get a stack of story mission agents on top of a normal set of soldiers or investigators, something where you want that extra push to get through a tough situation, then this item is your man. Because that situation is pretty niche, it doesn't happen super often, I'm going to leave it here in the B tier. Let me know in the comments if you guys like using this one in conjunction with High Alert more often, and the kind of results that it's been giving you. Speaking of ways to restore smarts after that last item, my guards here are training up at the Dodo Educator. Oh, I love this guy. This again embodies that zany kind of dumb sense of humor that the game has just perfectly. So the Dodo Educator is also very similar to the giant egg. It offers 3 locations for minions to increase their smarts. They can even get smarter looking at the dodo's butt, but then right in front of him is a spot where they can train. Basic worker minions can train to be scientists, and they train rapidly. Just like the egg, they're going to train as fast as if they had another instructor helping them, which they do. They have Professor Dodo, and he is just absolutely fantastic. Maybe I'm getting a little carried away by how cute his animations and just overall style is, but I'm throwing him up there in the S tier. Having the 3 spots for minions to increase smarts on top of offering the super fast training just seems like it's offering so much. They're combining a ton of effects into this single item. He's also super space efficient. This guy he does it all. The egg, unfortunately, is staying down here in A. It's supposed to get that augment of having the buff to the research speed of new trainees out of it, but that buff expires, whereas the Dodo is always going to be there to restore the smarts of your minions. So by that right, he is going up here with the Sarcophagus into the S tier. Gaze and wonder at the Colombian Emerald. This loot item has a large radius, and minions who pass through that radius receive the buff from the emerald, restoring morale more quickly. This is a fantastic buff. This is very similar to some of the highest level decorations that will allow faster stat restore, but this is better than those because it has a larger radius, and minions don't have to stay within the radius to get the effect. They can just pass by, get the buff, and then they still have it wherever they go. It is absolutely fantastic. Throw this down around the stat room with those EGTVs so that the minions trying to get their morale up is going to happen really fast, or clump the other kind of advanced morale buffs nearby it, and you're going to see a significant benefit. Heck, you can even put this just in a high traffic area of the base, and then because it's going to be spitting out so many buffs, it's going to do a lot of work for you. Ranking the Colombian Emerald, it feels like it's right in between A and S. I'm not sure I want to push it all the way up there, so I'm going to be putting it here in A tier. It does a lot of work for you, no regrets for picking this up, and as long as you have intelligent item placement around it so that you have that kind of morale improvement cluster section of your lair, it's going to do a ton of work for you. Dum dum, give me gum gum. The Easter Island head is always watching. This giant security camera is pretty interesting. Let's see, if we move it over, you can get an exact view of what its radius is. It's a little bit longer than the normal security cameras, but it doesn't fan out either. It's just a straight shot down a corridor. Perfect for that. The 4 spaces wide is just ideal for that kind of placement. And then on top of that, he is never unmanned. So he does count as a security camera against your limit, but you're never going to see the disabled icon above his head based on a minion not working your security camera viewpoints, whatever, the security tables. Advanced security stations. And so even if I had no minions working these security stations, he would still be tapped into the network and notify the guards. Notify the guards at the security tables. I can only imagine what it's like taking his calls when he says, "You're security intruders." But that's what he does. On the tier list, we're putting the head right here in the middle in B tier. Having the absolute consistency that he's never unmanned is very nice, but I don't find the spotting power from my security cameras themselves to be kind of a make or break issue. I also like just having advanced security stations and having the guards right around the entrances to my lair and have those guys be the ones who see through the agent disguises, or if a particularly dangerous set of investigators is coming, then I will go ahead and lend the micro of sending over henchmen or my genius to help out. So I don't really rely entirely on my security cameras to be able to pull those things off. Now, if you're playing as Emma, maybe he's even better because she can increase the spotting power through her cameras, but otherwise, and just considering him overall, putting him into the B tier. Oh, pesky little soldier, you are about to be met with the stingers of 1,000,000 bees. Oh no, get up! Run! Run, you fool! Oh, it's carnage, absolute carnage, and it's hitting. No, it's hitting my minions as well. Ooh, that one definitely hurts. So, 1,000,000 bees is a pretty awesome trap. It does resolve damage. It gets placed down here in a 2x2 grid, and then it affects 2 tiles out. So you can do some pretty creative style placements with your traps and your larger corridors here using this. Doing resolve damage from traps is actually really good because the more agents you scare away, the better. When you kill agents, then you have to fight these waves of soldiers. So being able to get rid of them without actually killing them is pretty beneficial because these soldier waves are no joke. They are definitely going to tax your minion numbers and wipe out tons and tons of security. So just not having to fight them is definitely a plus. And this 1,000,000 bees trap can play right into that, right along with, let's see here, let's go back to our items. Look at our other trap options. And so obviously you have the killer bees. This is kind of the improved killer bees. And then you also have, I believe, the bubble cannon, which are non-lethal trap options that are going to be damaging the resolve of the agents. There's starting to be quite the pedigree of loot trap items, and this one is no exception, going right into the A tier. Love all of these loot traps. One can only wonder the horrors those beady little piggy eyes have seen. The world's largest piggy bank here adds $30,000 to your vault capacity. It is suspicious to rogues, but it should be suspicious to anyone to keep such a large pink piggy bank in your base. Having the piggy bank also unlocks hilarious scams that you can pull out on the world stage. So we have here one of them. There's a bunch of different ones. This one's called Moonshot. Too few moguls are properly equipped to fire their cards into space at the moon, so they're passing the hat to crowdfund the construction of a car catapult for every oligarch. Dip your hand in the pot. And this requires only a spin doctor and 2 socialites, and it generates plenty of money over 10 minutes. They did not hit these schemes with the whole scheme rebalance that they did in patch 1.3, so these are still the old style schemes. They do still get to show you your cash per second, which is very nice. And honestly, I think this is a great cause, so we're going to launch this one right now. The question when ranking the pig is how good are those money-making schemes, because we've kind of already established if all he does is add to our vault capacity, then he's going all the way down in D tier. I think the schemes are pretty good because they require so few minions. That's really the efficiency side that I like, and so we're gonna bump him up. The schemes are gonna carry him up into C tier, but otherwise the vault capacity is very unexciting, and the schemes, while good and hilarious, you can make tons of money even without getting this guy. So don't sweat it if you miss him, but if you get him, then check out those schemes and go ahead and read through what the schemes are, because that's where most of the fun is. If you find yourself running late, the time machine can always help. So this is a very cool loot item. It offers a position for a minion to work it, and then it activates, and then minions that fall within its radius here will receive the buff. You see the chair. Apparently the chair is the time machine. I'm not sure if they're pulling that from some specific story that I'm just not aware of, but they get this buff always in a hurry, and so it makes them run to wherever they're going, even if they're just kind of wandering around. So it gets them to that next job faster, it gets them to restoring their stats faster, it just runs things quicker within your lair, and that's a pretty nice thing to have. I really love the feel of my base running faster and more efficiently, regardless of how much the minions jogging to their next job is really doing for me. I might actually put this all the way up in S tier if it was shaped like a DeLorean. Because it is not a super cool sports car, we're just gonna leave it here in A. All the calamities and horrors of the world are stored right here in Pandora's box. So, for being the font of all evil, it seems like an evil genius could have some awesome applications of this box, but apparently the box is still considered too dangerous even by your genius, so you leave it just locked up. It has a position for minions to look at it, and they'll reduce their smarts, so it feels like it should be doing something, and then it will actually show the icon for a tech running to repair it afterwards. So it also seems to have something to do with durability, or maybe that's a bug. It actually doesn't have a durability bar. So there's just a lot of mysteries around this one. We have a place where the unexplained or bugged loot items go, and so that's down here in the D tier. The world's oldest bones has made a new friend, and if I get a update as to the effects of this item, check the description and any pinned comments, and I'll have it down there. The Terracotta Army, or at least what's left of it. I guess Max could extend the army with gold statues, but playing as Zalika here, we're stuck with only 9 of the figures, but that is plenty. So there are 3 spots for your security minions to walk up and marvel at the stone statues, and they will deplete their smarts till they get to about 40, and then they're going to receive the buff. We see here the buff Stone Skin has been enhanced by a strange mystical energy, making them much tougher. So your guards get damage resistance based on this buff, and this buff will last for about 2.5 minutes or so. Ranking this item is fairly challenging because the buff is undeniably amazing. Getting damage resistance on your security forces is so useful, but there is definitely an argument to be made that the guards who receive the buff are often not going to be able to use it in a fight because it doesn't have that long of a duration, and the ones who are using the item are the ones who are kind of in patrol mode or just wandering around, rather than the ones stationed at a security desk, and those are the guys who are going to be responding to fights. You can kind of mitigate this by placing the item right in the vicinity of where fights break out, and then also having the items that will increase guard smarts right next to there so that you kind of keep them contained to that danger zone area and have them respond to any kind of combat that breaks out just automatically. But you do have to accept that your guards are often not going to be able to use the buff that they receive from this item. Because of that, we're going to toss this guy in the middle here in B tier. If you come up with a really intelligent placement of items, I think this could go up to A or even S, but otherwise, you're often going to see those buffs be wasted. The RAYGUN Dispenser. Available after you defeat Agent X, you get awesome alien technology that you can put into the hands of any of your security forces. Well, aside from your martial arts masters. So these do damage equal to the rifles that you have available, so it's a way to kind of optimize your security forces. You can have even your basic guards be able to do rifle damage with these guys. Okay, so Judy Giblet here has decided to wander through my corridor of traps while a group of soldiers is here. It's going to be a little weird because she's probably going to get wiped out super fast, but at least we get to show off what the ray gun looks like in combat. Fire, fire! And we get this awesome particle effect of the disabled soldier, and she's dead already. But there you go, that's the ray gun. Just know that its damage is equal to the full rifles, so you're able to give a improved handgun effectively to 5 of your guys. I really like having advanced weapon options for my security forces. Being able to have my guards operate at the highest level of efficiency possible is so useful for being able to deal with advanced agent types. Keep your minion count high and not just feel like you're suffering every time a wave of soldiers comes in to hit you. Let me know in the comments if this guy is the Doomsday device from the first game. The Tsar Bomb is a super straightforward loot item. It provides 150 power with the same space footprint as a single fusion generator. So here the comparison is you require 4 fusion generators to be able to make as much power as coming out of the Tsar Bomb. And because power is so expensive both in terms of space and money, I really like this loot item. I like the simplicity and raw stats on this guy so much that I'm putting him all the way up in A tier. He's just very straightforward and I love it. It makes sense that the wealthiest and wisest man in the world had the sense to take all of the valuables out of his mines for himself, leaving us with just the mines. This adds $20,000 of capacity to your vault, and that's it. It is extremely disappointing, and I do not like it at all. These guys get to be the best friends with the Arabian jars down at the very bottom. I just don't like loot items that are only giving me vault capacity. This is all of the readily available loot items in the game, but the completionist in me will not be satisfied until I cover all of the pre-order and DLC loot items as well, so I'm going to save my final reflections till after we cover those. First up here, we have the Trojan horse available very early in the game. This guy gives you access to unique schemes out on the world stage. There are a couple different flavor text options for these schemes, but they all require basically the same commitment in workers and basically give you the same rewards. And they are very good compared to these other schemes at level 1. They just blow them out of the water. Now, once you get up to the more advanced schemes, then things start to balance out. This guy is somewhat comparable in terms of how much heat gain you're getting, and it's giving you almost as much money per 5 seconds. But it's also not requiring any minions to be invested, so there's definitely a lot of factors you have to consider when you're evaluating how good these schemes are. These ones I consider very good for the early game and then start falling off in the mid to late game. And with the new rebalance, I find that I make most of my money just off of passive income, and in general, the extra 90 heat gain that this scheme will give to the region would kind of scare me off from doing it later on. But if you need that shot of cash really fast, these guys are great. Trojan Horse is going right in the middle here with the B tier because his effectiveness really just depends on his schemes, and those fall off the later in the game you are. So if you pick him up as soon as he's available, his schemes are amazing. They will shoot you straight through the early portion of the game, but then later on they're just going to end up being clutter on the world stage. Next up, we have the Aurora Borealis. I showed this item to my wife and she about slapped me. She was so mad because we've spent the year living in interior Alaska and still not been able to see the real thing. What this functions as is a distraction item here in your casino. It will distract tourists and agents alike, damaging their resolve. It has spaces for a ton of different users all at once and doesn't require an operator itself, so it's very, very nice. It also doesn't generate suspicion. I saw some early reports that this guy was being stolen by rogues, but I don't believe that is the case as of one of the patches they fixed that. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this up into S tier. Having the extra variety to place into your cover operation, not requiring an operator so it's always functioning, and damaging resolve of agents is very, very valuable. Being able to turn them away without having to fight and kill them is quite beneficial because then you don't have to fight quite so many waves of soldiers. So putting this all the way into the S tier. The Fountain of Youth. Man, the story that I most associate with the Fountain of Youth is actually the Age of Empires 3 campaign. Oh man, what a callback. But this item is incredible. It has a spot for a single minion to use it. It's usable by all minion types, and it will increase their health to 100. It is supposed to be balanced by making them dumb, meaning that they are more susceptible to agent disguises. Let's read the buffs here once this guy finishes topping off. So we already have them here. Unsuspecting, more likely to be fooled by agent disguises, and Fountain of Youth. Feels great. So even after he leaves the fountain, he is still regenerating health, and this will go up and up and up. And this can even stack. I don't know if this is a bug. It could be a bug, but what I've seen is that it stacks with other health upgrades he has. So he's going to keep on going. He could hit 150 health. 150 health on your security minions is incredible. Pretty easy to rank this one all the way at the top. Oh my gosh, getting 150 health on your minions, so good. It's supposed to be balanced by there being more susceptible to agent disguises, but that's not very much of a deterrent. You get so much extra spotting power from the minions who are not affected by the fountain. Your security cameras, your genius, your henchmen, etc., that being able to cut through agent disguises is pretty easy. You're not going to find yourself suffering as a result of your minions being unsuspecting. You're just going to feel that benefit of having the extra punch of a ton more health. The Espectro DLC, or I should say the Cabal Pack DLC, brought in 2 new loot items, so I'm going to break them down together. We have here the RAYGUN, a Doomsday prototype, and then the Induction chair. So the RAYGUN functions as a reskin of the interrogation chair. It allows you to interrogate agents or minions or any of the storyline functions, and then you just get intel and they end up dying afterwards. Voila! The Induction chair is their way of allowing you to switch between henchman skins, which were incorporated as of the new DLC. So you can select your henchman, as you see here. Eli is rocking the new duds, looking very fine indeed, and you could have him go over here if you wanted him to change back into his normal outfit. You just right-click on the item, and then he'll go back into the chair, come out as the classic Eli that we all know and love as well. Okay, where to rank these guys? So Induction chair, it's just a reskin. It is actually a reskin. Now, plenty of these other items here do the same thing as basic items that you have, but they do them in a slightly different way or an improved way. This is straight up only a reskin. It looks cool, but it also takes up more space. I'm not gonna put up with just reskins of basic stuff, so D tier for that. Induction chair, exact same thing, right? Reskins of henchmen, sign me up. Oh man, Eli's looking good. And have you seen Full Metal Jackie in the Espectro outfit? Oh, she's looking fine. I absolutely love it. S tier induction chair. 2 final honorable mentions are loot items that they used as exclusives for promotional pre-order options. You could receive Mr. Scuffles, a statue of a little dog wearing a minion helmet if you signed up for their newsletter. And if you signed up for their Discord or some other sign up, I believe that you would be able to get this statue kind of memorializing the first game. This was how you defeated Agent Steel apparently in the first game. I never played it, so I don't know. If you guys got it, hopefully they look good, but I think that they're only cosmetic. I feel like I also have to mention that this is just not including the flavor loot items that are included for different geniuses. Like Ivan's able to build Mishka here into his inner sanctum. Mishka does nothing, it just looks like his bear, it's his old friend. And then you also have the number 2 memorial, the agent or the minion in the tutorial that I believe you kill. So you can get those, and there's a couple others like this, but they just weren't without any effects and being scattered across all of the different campaigns. I didn't bother ranking them. Here is the full tier list. That is everything that there is to know about how to get these items, what they do, and how good they are. So overall, the trap loot items did very well. You're gonna love having those and incorporating them into your trap networks. The rapid trainers are pretty nice. The items that increase health, I find that to be super important for the combat capabilities of your minions. Very, very important, especially now in patch 1.3, hitting all these advanced agent types, really high levels of agents. They can just wipe you out if your minions aren't prepared. So both the Sarcophagus and the Fountain of Youth doing really well up there. As we trickle down, generally the items that help with combat are up towards the top. We've got the RAYGUN Dispenser, we've got Stone Skin coming out of here, we have Dr. Jekyll's Potion giving you the bonus in Red Alert, and then the other stat increasers are kind of more towards the bottom. So generally the items that are towards the bottom are ones that help improve areas of your base that I don't find to be that important. But your personal playstyle is going to change your ranking for a lot of these items. If you see something that I may have ranked really low, but you still feel like would bring something to your lair that you would really like, then definitely go for it. Playing through these side stories is fun, and trying to collect them all is pretty interesting, and it gives you a much larger dimension to the game. On the whole, though, the way they have set up the loot side stories to only be available within certain chapters of the game, I find to be really frustrating. I think the idea was they didn't want your selection of side stories in that one scrolling menu to get too overwhelming, but it is just super frustrating to suddenly have these side stories disappear from you, or learn about the requirements for something that you think you really would like and then find out that you've advanced the main story too far and time never goes back. You can only go forward or start a new game, as the developers seem to be fond of making you do. Final note is that it is still impossible to be able to get the achievement for unlocking all of the loot. This is because the Hubbard Slice and the Flame of Prometheus are mutually exclusive items, and so you can only pick up one or the other. In my case, it's always been the Hubbard Slice. I've never been able to get the Flame of Prometheus. I wish I knew why. But yeah, those items are going to keep you out of being able to pick that up, just the way that Clara and Carl, being mutually exclusive henchmen, have broken that Steam achievement as well. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, comment to discuss your favorite loot item and any details that I may have missed. Hopefully this becomes a really good resource for people looking to unlock loot items and know all the details about them. And subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. Thank you guys for watching, and have a good one.